When an avoidant says, "I'm not ready for a relationship, but don't go," that sentence is not confusion. It's a contract they're trying to slip onto your heart. A contract that says, "Give me your loyalty, your time, your softness, your emotional availability, but don't ask me to choose you, don't ask me to show up consistently, and don't ask me to be accountable." It sounds gentle, even honest, but it's one of the most dangerous lines, because it keeps you emotionally tied to someone who is openly telling you they will not hold your needs with care. The first half is clear. I'm not ready. That means they can't offer stability, commitment, or consistency. The second half is the problem, but don't go. That means they still want access. They still want the comfort of you. They still want the benefits of love without the responsibilities of love. They want the relationship energy, but they want to keep the escape hatch wide open. This is how you end up in the most exhausting place: waiting. You start waiting for them to heal, waiting for them to be ready, waiting for them to realize, waiting for the version of them you saw on their good days. Meanwhile, they get to live with no deadline and no consequences. They get your emotional presence as a safety net. They get to disappear and return. They get to take space whenever they feel overwhelmed, and still expect you to be there when they feel lonely again. And the truth is, if they were truly not ready, they wouldn't ask you to stay attached. They would set you free. Because not ready is a boundary. Don't go is a demand. A healthy adult who isn't ready says, "I respect you too much to keep you stuck." An unhealthy dynamic says, "I'm not ready, but I want you to keep choosing me anyway." That's not love. That's control through uncertainty. That's you being placed on standby, so they can keep their comfort without committing to your safety. This line also quietly trains you to betray yourself. You start minimizing your needs so you don't scare them off. You start accepting crumbs, because you're afraid a boundary will make them leave. You start tolerating inconsistency, because you keep telling yourself, "At least they're honest." But honesty without change is still harm. Someone can be honest about their limitations and still use you to soothe their loneliness. And watch what usually happens next. They will give you just enough to keep you hopeful. A check-in, a sweet moment, a little affection, a miss you. Then when closeness starts to build, they pull away again. The cycle repeats because the relationship is now built on their comfort, not on mutual commitment. You become the steady one. They become the deciding one. You become the one who holds the emotional weight. They become the one who gets to opt in and out. That's why you walk away immediately, not out of anger, but out of self-respect. Because staying after that line means you're agreeing to a relationship where your needs are optional. And love cannot survive when one person's needs are treated like pressure and the other person's needs are treated like entitlement. If you stay, you teach them that they can keep you without building anything. If you leave, you teach them that access requires readiness and responsibility. The strongest response is calm and clean, not dramatic. "I hear you. I want a relationship with consistency. If you're not ready, I respect that, but I'm stepping back." Or, "I'm not available for half connection. If you ever become ready to show up consistently, you can reach out." Or, "I care about you, but I'm choosing what's healthy for me." Notice what these lines do. They don't beg. They don't argue. They don't try to convince. They simply refuse to be held in limbo. And that is the moment your power returns, because your power is not in making someone ready. Your power is in refusing to pause your life for someone who is asking you to stay attached to uncertainty. If they truly value you, they will either step up with actions, not promises, or they will let you go. If they get angry at your boundary, that tells you the truth: they didn't want partnership, they wanted access. And access without commitment is exactly the trap that slowly destroys your self-worth, because it teaches you to accept love that is always conditional on their comfort. When an avoidant says, "Let's just keep it casual," Or, I don't want labels. You need to hear what's underneath the softness of that sentence. Because most of the time, it isn't freedom, it's protection. It's a way to keep access to you, while staying immune from the responsibilities that come with choosing you. Casual sounds harmless until you often becomes a relationship where you're expected to give partner level energy, while they reserve the right to act like a stranger the moment things get real. Ladies and gentlemen, labels aren't the issue. Accountability is the issue. A label doesn't create love. A label creates clarity, and clarity creates expectations. Expectations create responsibility. That's the chain an avoidant is trying to break. Because the moment something is defined, they can't hide behind confusion. They can't disappear and call it space without consequences. They can't breadcrumb you and call it being chill. They can't take intimacy and deny obligation at the same time. No labels often means no responsibility. And here's how it traps you. The connection can feel intensely romantic in moments. They'll text you late at night. They'll share vulnerable stories. They'll be affectionate. They'll act jealous when you talk to someone else. They'll want your emotional support. They'll want your attention. They'll want your body. They'll want your loyalty. But when you ask for consistency, when you ask for clarity, when you ask where this is going, they suddenly get distant, irritated, or defensive. Because you're asking them to pay for what they're receiving. That's the real reason casual is dangerous with an avoidant. It creates a one-way benefit system. You invest emotionally, they stay protected. You wait, they wander. You hope, they hover. You attach, they avoid. And the worst part is, they can always retreat behind a sentence that makes you feel unreasonable. We said this was casual. That line becomes their permission slip to hurt you without accountability. If they disappear for days, you're not allowed to complain. If they keep you in uncertainty, you're not allowed to ask questions. If they flirt with others, you're not allowed to feel betrayed. Because they'll point to the agreement and say, you knew what this was, but you didn't know what it would cost you. You didn't know that casual would slowly teach your nervous system to accept instability as normal. You didn't know you'd start measuring your worth by how quickly they reply. You didn't know you'd start shrinking your needs so you don't scare them away. You didn't know you'd be stuck between two humiliating positions, acting like you don't care when you do, or caring openly and being told you're too much. That's why no labels is often not a boundary. It's a power position. It lets them decide when to come close and when to disappear. It lets them take the best parts of relationship intimacy while refusing the hard parts: repair, responsibility, commitment, consistency. And if you accept that dynamic, you end up doing emotional labor in a connection that has no emotional contract. Now, to be fair, there are situations where casual is honest and mutual. If both people truly want something light, if there's no deep emotional attachment, if boundaries are clear and respected, it can work. But most people aren't hurt by mutual casual. People are hurt by one-sided casual when one person wants casual because they're afraid to commit, and the other person hopes casual will turn into love. Avoidants often thrive in one-sided casual because it keeps them safe from their biggest fear: being needed, being accountable, being seen deeply. So what do you do when someone says it? You don't argue. You don't beg. You don't try to prove that labels don't matter. You simply protect yourself with truth. You can say, I'm not looking for casual. I want consistency and emotional safety. If you can't offer that, I respect it, but I'm stepping back. Or, no labels is fine, but I'm not doing relationship benefits without relationship behavior. Or, I can do slow, but I can't do unclear. Because the moment you accept casual that hurts you, you teach your heart to live on crumbs. And if you keep giving partner level access to someone who insists on casual, you're not being patient, you're being placed on standby. The right person won't need ambiguity to keep you. The right person will choose you clearly. And if they can't choose you clearly, the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to stop letting their fear decide the shape of your life. When an avoidant says, "You're too much," or "You're too emotional," what they're really saying is, "Your vulnerability makes me uncomfortable." They use those words not because you're overwhelming, but because your honesty threatens the wall they've built to protect themselves. Avoidants crave connection on a subconscious level, but the moment that connection requires emotional exposure, they panic. They start perceiving your humanity as pressure. Instead of meeting your emotions with empathy, they label them as problems, because if your feelings are too much, they don't have to face what triggered them. This is emotional deflection disguised as self-protection. When you express hurt, confusion, or longing, they interpret it as attack. They grew up equating closeness with danger or control. So when you show emotion, their brain doesn't register care, it registers risk. Their system goes into flight mode. They withdraw, minimize, or mock your emotions to shrink the intensity of the moment. It's not that they don't feel anything, it's that feeling too much terrifies them. Your emotion activates their unprocessed shame, their fear of inadequacy, their guilt for not being emotionally available. And instead of sitting in that discomfort, they make it about you. The cruel part is how believable it can sound. When someone you love tells you you're too sensitive, you start questioning yourself. You wonder if you really overreacted, if maybe you expect too much, if being open is wrong. Slowly you start editing yourself. You express less, you explain more. You rehearse your words before every conversation. You start protecting their comfort instead of your own peace. And that's exactly how you begin losing yourself in the relationship. Because their avoidance trains you to avoid too. You stop being authentic to stay acceptable. But here's the truth: you are not too much for the right person. You are only too much for someone who doesn't have the capacity to hold you. Healthy partners don't shame your emotions, they make space for them. They don't need you to shrink to feel safe. They regulate themselves instead of controlling you. Avoidants, however, often use that phrase as emotional armor. It allows them to maintain superiority in the dynamic. You're emotional, they're rational. You're reactive, they're calm. But this calmness isn't peace, it's disconnection. It's emotional absence disguised as control. Over time, the relationship starts feeling one-sided. You apologize for being too emotional, while they never apologize for being emotionally absent. You start performing neutrality to earn their attention. You start believing that your love would be enough if only you were less intense. But love built on suppression isn't intimacy. It's survival. It's you bending to fit someone else's limits. If you hear those words, remember this: emotional expression is not the problem, emotional irresponsibility is. You have the right to express feelings, needs, confusion, or hurt. You have the right to expect empathy. You have the right to clarity and repair. What you don't have to do is keep proving that your emotions are valid to someone committed to misunderstanding them. When an avoidant tells you you're too much, they're confessing their limitation, not describing your flaw. They're showing you that they can't yet coexist with emotional depth without feeling threatened. That's not your signal to shrink, it's your signal to leave. Because staying means accepting a dynamic where you'll forever walk on eggshells to avoid being too much. And that is how emotional neglect becomes normalized. You become quiet, they stay comfortable, and the relationship remains shallow. But real love demands presence, not perfection. It asks for emotional courage, not avoidance. So if someone repeatedly calls your feelings too much, they're not setting a boundary, they're setting the bar on the floor. And if you want peace, you have to stop fighting for space in someone's world that only feels safe when you're silent. When an avoidant says, "I don't owe you an explanation," that isn't confidence, it's a warning. It's the sentence people use when they want the freedom to disappear, hurt you, and return on their terms without ever being held accountable. It's not about boundaries. Healthy boundaries sound like, I can't talk right now, but I will tomorrow, or I need space, and here's when we'll reconnect. I don't owe you an explanation, is different. It's a refusal to treat you like a human being with feelings. It's the declaration that your confusion doesn't matter, your pain doesn't matter, and your need for clarity is an inconvenience. And ladies and gentlemen, when someone says that, what they're really doing is rewriting the rules of connection. Because connection requires two basic things, consideration and communication. Not constant communication. Not control. Not interrogation. Just basic decency. If you're dating someone, sleeping with someone, emotionally involved with someone, there is a shared responsibility not to leave them in emotional chaos. You don't get to benefit from someone's love and then claim you owe them nothing when your behavior causes harm. That is not independence. That is entitlement. This phrase is also a shield against guilt, a shield against questions, a shield against repair, because explanations create accountability, and accountability is what avoidants fear when their behavior isn't clean. If they explain, you might ask follow-up questions. If they explain, they might have to admit they were wrong. If they explain, they might have to face your disappointment. If they explain, they might have to change. So instead, they shut it down with one harsh line that places you beneath them. I don't owe you. It's a power move. And the power move works because it triggers your anxiety. You start thinking, am I asking for too much? Am I being needy? Maybe I should back off. You start shrinking your expectations so you don't get abandoned. And that's how you get trained into tolerating emotional neglect. They don't have to improve. You just get quieter. But here's the truth: if you are close enough to receive their affection, you are close enough to receive their honesty. If you are close enough to share your body, your time, your emotional energy, then you are not a stranger. You are not a random person on the street. A relationship, any real relationship, includes a basic duty of care. You don't owe someone a courtroom defense, but you do owe them human decency. You owe them clarity when your actions affect them. You owe them respectful communication, especially when you're stepping back. So when they say this line, what they're really saying is, I want the benefits of you, but I refuse the responsibility of you. And that is exactly why you walk away immediately. Because a person who refuses to explain will also refuse to repair. A person who refuses to explain will also refuse to be accountable. A person who refuses to explain will make you live in uncertainty, and uncertainty is where anxious attachment grows and self-respect dies. You'll see it in the pattern. They'll vanish for days. They'll return like nothing happened. You'll ask what happened, and they'll get cold. They'll call you controlling for wanting clarity. They'll accuse you of starting drama for wanting a simple answer. They'll turn your basic needs into a character flaw. Over time, you stop asking, you stop expressing, you stop expecting. And then you don't even recognize yourself, because you became small to fit someone else's avoidance. A healthy partner can handle a simple question. A healthy partner can say, I was overwhelmed. A healthy partner can say, I needed a day. A healthy partner can say, I'm not okay right now, but I'll talk later. Those are explanations that show respect without surrendering their boundaries. But, I don't owe you an explanation, is not a boundary. It's a statement of emotional abandonment. So the clean response is not to debate. You don't beg for decency. You don't argue about what you deserve. You simply choose yourself. You can say, calmly, if you can't communicate respectfully, we're not compatible. Or, I'm not available for a connection where I'm left in the dark. Or, I respect your choice, and I'm stepping away. Because the moment you accept that line, you accept a relationship where you will constantly be punished for wanting clarity. And love cannot grow where basic communication is treated as an entitlement. Real love doesn't hide behind, "I don't owe you." Real love says, "I care enough to be honest, even when it's uncomfortable." When an avoidant says, "This is just how I am, take it or leave it," they're not describing a personality, they're declaring a refusal to grow, a refusal to repair, a refusal to be accountable for the impact they have on you. It sounds like confidence, but it's usually a shortcut to avoid responsibility. Because the moment they label their behavior as "who I am," they're trying to make your pain irrelevant. And ladies and gentlemen, the danger isn't just the sentence. The danger is the message behind it. "I will not change and I expect you to adapt to the damage." Healthy people can say, "This is who I am," in a way that means, "I know myself." But this version means, "I'm protecting my comfort." It's often used right when you ask for something basic: consistency, communication, respect, repair. You're not asking them to become a different person. You're asking them to stop hurting you with the same patterns. And instead of meeting your need with maturity, they turn it into an ultimatum so they don't have to face the work. Because growth requires humility, and humility feels like vulnerability. This line is also a power move. It puts you in a corner. Either you accept their behavior and betray yourself, or you leave and risk losing them. It pressures you to tolerate disrespect just to prove you're loyal. It turns your standards into a threat. If you want better, you're the problem. And if you stay, you silently sign a contract that says, "My needs are optional." That contract will destroy you slowly. You start adjusting yourself around their limitations. You start becoming careful with your words. You start avoiding honest conversations. You start accepting silence as normal. You start rationalizing hot and cold. You start celebrating bare minimum, because asking for more triggers that same line again. And over time, you don't realize you're shrinking until you look back and see how much of yourself you gave away just to keep the connection. Here's the truth: take it or leave it is not love language. It's control language. Love says, "I hear you." Love says, "I didn't realize that hurt you." Love says, "I want to do better." Love says, "Let's figure this out." Even if someone struggles, even if they're imperfect, love includes willingness. This line removes willingness. It replaces partnership with dominance. It says, "My comfort is the priority, and your feelings are the cost of being with me." And the reason this is an immediate walk-away line is because it predicts the future. If they won't grow now, they won't grow later. If they won't repair now, they won't repair after bigger hurts. If they won't communicate now, they'll punish you with distance forever. If they won't compromise now, you will always be the one compromising. This sentence is a preview of every conflict you'll ever have with them. You'll bring a valid concern, and they'll respond with a wall. Not a discussion, not empathy, not accountability, a wall. Because a wall keeps them safe from shame, but it leaves you alone with the emotional mess. Sometimes they'll dress it up as honesty. "I'm being real with you." But real honesty doesn't demand that you accept pain. Real honesty comes with responsibility. "I struggle with this, and I'm working on it." The avoidant version often means, "This is my pattern, and I'm not interested in changing it." Your job is to tolerate it. You don't build love in that environment. You build anxiety. Because now, your nervous system is living under a constant threat. Anytime you ask for respect, you might get pushed away. That threat trains you to stay quiet. It trains you to accept crumbs. It trains you to be easy, so you don't get discarded. And the more you accept, the more they believe you will continue accepting. Respect drops when your standards disappear. The strongest response to this line is not anger. It's clarity. You can say, "I hear you, and I'm choosing to leave." Or, "I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm asking for basic respect. If that's not available, I'm not staying." Or, "If your identity requires hurting me, we're not compatible." Because the truth is, You don't need to convince someone to care about your feelings. If they cared, they'd be willing to try. This line tells you they're not willing. It's not your job to prove your worth growth. It's your job to protect your peace from a person who calls their unwillingness a personality trait and expects you to call it love.